iced tea, there's munchkins, candy, water. Just help yourself whenever you want. Okay?
All fat-free.
All fat-free, yes.
Lord.
It's all sugar-free and fat-free. All right, so let's get started. Mi gente. CAFÉ Reading Strategies in the Bilingual Classroom. My name is Joel Ramirez. I'm a third grade bilingual teacher here at Salvatore, as you all know. This September I start my third year, my third and final year, and then I'll be 10. It's pretty cool. Before that, I was an assistant at Tiny Tots Preschool, and I also taught 4 semesters at Cumberland County College. I taught remedial grammar and freshman seminar. So that's my background in education. Before that, some of you know that I was an actor, singer, songwriter in New York for like 8, 9 years. And after pounding the pavement for like 8, 9 years and working for 6 months and being out of work for like a year, I decided to pursue my other passion, which is teaching. So I was in Puerto Rico. I went to Puerto Rico for a month just to kind of think, what am I going to do now? Do I want to go back to New York? Do I want to continue this? Do I want to like pounding the pavement until I'm 40, 45? And I ended up staying in Puerto Rico for 6 years. And I went back to school. I went to La Dominicana, got my teaching degree. And people are so funny because they ask me, why didn't you just go to New Jersey and get your BA in New Jersey? Well, first of all, my university is right in front of the beach, not a seawall, and it's a lot cheaper. So that's why I did that. But I always had the intention of coming back to Vineland and teaching here. I always knew that I wanted to teach ESL and bilingual. And it's funny because my parents, my mom and my family went up to see me graduate. And we were sitting by the pool and we were talking, and my brother Obi says, wouldn't it be like crazy if you went back to Vineland? You got a job as a teacher at Benny's. I kid you not. He said that to me in Puerto Rico. Or Johnson. He said, can you imagine if you got a job at Benny's or Johnstone? The 2 schools that you grew up in, basically. So I was like, yeah, that would be incredible. That would be pretty cool. So I came back to Vineland, got all my teaching certs, spent up the wazoo taking exams and all that good stuff that we all know about. And I applied for a job. Bilingual, elementary school teacher. So I walk in and I see Joanna's there, and Serena shakes my hand. I'm the principal at Benny's. I'm like, no way. I mean, I didn't do that. But inside I was like, no way.
Right.
So
he was very professional.
yeah, so I got the job. My first interview, I got the job at Benny's, and I freaked out. I was, a little overwhelmed because my undergrad is in ESL, and if you're familiar with the way ESL runs, and I know you are in Puerto Rico, ESL in Puerto Rico is a class in of itself.
Right.
It's just like science, like math. It's 45, 50 minutes of English language teaching. And I knew I wanted to be a classroom teacher. And here, ESL is a little bit different. It's more of a pull out, and you're working with small groups. And not that I wouldn't be happy doing that, but I knew I wanted to be a classroom teacher. So that's why I got into elementary. So the first year was a big challenge. You know the challenges of being a first year teacher. The curriculum is very intense, very vigorous. And then you have, here, do CAFÉ. So I'm like, sure, I'll do CAFÉ. And I did. But as we continue talking about CAFÉ, I'm going to tell you my own experiences with CAFÉ and how I didn't let myself get overwhelmed with the system. All right? So that's a little bit about me. Now, it's a little icebreaker. So what I want you to do is, I want you to tell me your name, your position in the district, and I want you to share one challenge and one reward you have experienced teaching bilingual students. And I guess for you it would be just working with the bilingual
Yeah.
program.
That's exactly that.
So I'm going to go first.
Nice. I'm gonna ride the whale.
So, I'm going to ride the whale. So I guess the biggest challenge for me was teaching reading and writing to bilingual kids. Not only, I think just teaching reading and writing in general is hard. Not only just to bilingual kids. But, you know, it's something that I love doing. And a lot of kids are very apprehensive when it comes to reading and writing. So my biggest challenge was getting my kids to love to read and to know that they can get better at it. So the reward for me, I think that my genuine enthusiasm for reading is a little contagious. I know that you've observed me in the classroom. I tend to go crazy in the classroom, and I'm very happy-go-lucky. I think kids respond to that, and I think if you're enthusiastic about what you're doing, and you present it in a way that's very motivating, kids really, it rubs off on them. So the reward for me was having kids that at first didn't really like reading, and then after a while, you have kids coming up to you. Mr. Bermúdez, me encanta este cuento, esta autora, me encanta. I'm like, okay, wow. She just said autora. Or you have a kid that comes up to me, I had a kid who was perfectly bilingual last year, and he came up to me, he's like, do you have any more Patricia Polacco books? And I'm like, he just said Patricia Polacco perfectly. And I said her name in class because I love reading her books, and I said Patricia Polacco, but to have this kid come up to me and say, I love her books, Patricia Polacco, I love her stories. So that was the big reward for me, being able to see that evolution in a lot of my kids. Next. Come on,
That
sure.
could be me.
Yes.
Ride the whale.
Alright, so
We get extra credit for this.
I
don't
know,
we?
an extra PD hour. Okay. Can I write it like this? Because I think
Right,
it's like
anyway
Alright.
you want.
So, I mean, I've been teaching for 24 years. It's a long time. I'm looking forward to retiring in 8 years, hopefully. See what happens. I've taught almost every grade level in bilingual. And last year, I was fortunate to teach kindergarten, and I loved it first time. And now I'm moving with my students, and I'm going to first grade. Bilingual, so I'm excited about that.
You're leaving the
Wow.
East Wing.
Yeah, I'm leaving the East Wing, which is sad.
But we're going to get another.
It'll be okay. And so, wow, I've had so many challenges and so many rewards working as a bilingual teacher. But I have to say the biggest reward was last year. Only because I feel that finally the bilingual program is on the right track. We're teaching native instruction across the board, native language instruction across the board. And I don't feel anymore like I'm going crazy between two languages. I feel like I'm focused, on what I have to teach, and the growth of the students this year was just unbelievable. All my kids are reading. A lot of them are, well beyond first grade reading. And just to see, how well they did this year was extremely great. Because, it was a high number. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had 18 students. Yeah, I had 18 students, and 16 of them were reading. Even the one student who I had who was autistic, she was able to read sight words and all that. So that was a great experience. And I guess the one challenge was exactly that student who was not diagnosed yet as autistic, but from personal experience having a granddaughter who's autistic, I knew some of the things I was looking at. Her behaviors were pointing to that. And it was a big challenge because I knew she was capable of, you know, so much more than probably other, you know, people were expecting. And it was great to see her progress in such a beautiful manner. I didn't feel like an expert, of course, but you know, I realized that my teacher's intuition, I trust a lot in that, and the result was amazing. So that was challenging. And that's it, right? Woohoo!
Thank you, Shirley.
Can I jump in?
Go for it.
Sure.
Yes, go for
Because I
it.
was going to say, I can piggyback right off of that. And I wish you would have told us to wear pants today, but.
That's all right. I love it. We need a picture of this. Our supervisor, Dr. DeGrid, is riding the whale.
Right. Hey, you know what? If you're going to ride the whale, I'm going to ride the whale.
All right.
That's my philosophy about everything that we do here. Anyway, I'm the ESL Bilingual World Languages Performing Arts and Title I supervisor. Whatever else they decide to get me now that Andrea's gone, that's really frightening. And I just really wanted to sort of cut in line here, and because I just wanted to jump off of what I'd already heard about some of the challenges and the rewards for me and how they relate to, you know, your challenges and rewards. I think that the two most challenging things for me, one of them is everything that I do a little bit in the abstract. Because, I mean, I see the kids, I know some of them, I tend to know the superlatives, as I like to call them, the ones that are either, you know, always have some sort of issue or that are doing great. Those are the ones whose names I get to know. I don't really get to know the kids the way that you do. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of this job is that you're working for kids, but you're not really working with kids. And sometimes that really is a challenge for me to be able to still be able to do things for kids as if I knew every single one of them. And that's what's hard for me is not knowing every single one of them the way that I would like to. And the other thing is resources. I always say I kind of feel like I'm pushing a boulder up a hill every single day and just hoping it doesn't roll back on me. And if I move it an inch every day, then I need to be satisfied with that. But there's just never enough time. There's never enough money. I hate having to say no to someone because something is not in the budget, but unfortunately that's kind of been the way that things roll. And those are sort of the roots of a lot of my frustration is just, you know, the time and money issue and really not having a chance to get to know the kids the way that I would like to. And those are things that are just part of, you know, it's part of the job, which is different from the rewards. The rewards are fantastic. The first thing is when I get to hear things like what I just heard about how a teacher who's a veteran and last year was her most rewarding year because she was able to do things that I was able to help her do. You know, through running things through committees, through, you know, doing the boring stuff that I do sometimes. I was able to help somebody feel like they had sort of a new lease on what they were doing, and that's fantastic. To be able to hire people like Joel and Melinda and the group that we hired this year, and see what they go off and do. To be able to provide training that, you know, really is a shot in the arm for people who, you know, who can really benefit from that. That's something that really makes me happy. Summer school, to see those yellow buses rolling down the street and know that they're there because you were the one who put the paperwork in, you know, basically. Those sorts of things, you have to be a little bit abstract about it, but those things are extremely gratifying. So that's, you know, that's what I really enjoy is being able to see, you know, see the rewards from you guys. And I'm grateful for all of the work that you do. So thank you.
Next.
Most of you already know me. My name is Melinda Maldonado, and I teach 4th grade bilingual. And I would say my biggest challenge would definitely be starting at a new district. I came from Brixton, where I taught for 3 years, and you begin a rapport with your colleagues. You get to know the curriculum. So making the transition from Brixton to Vineland was a little scary. And for me, I had to start all over and build new relationships, and I needed to start to learn what the curriculum was here so that I can put it into place. So that to me was my challenge, and my reward would have to be that when I see the children, like Joel said, for you it's the reading, for me it's the passion of writing. When I can see the children being able to come in with very limited writing skills, and then at the end of the year you see them writing stories, you see them writing myths, and wanting to be authors. That to me touches my heart, because I believe that there's no limit for our students. I think they have extra talent because they know both languages. I think they put more effort in their work, and the parents become more involved. They're proactive. The parents care because they know that they have a disadvantage that they didn't have what their children can have today. So for me, my reward is once May's over and New Jersey task is over, and I can see that they're feeling comfortable. They don't have that anxiety level up here so high like they did in September because they don't know what to expect. When May comes, they're like more relaxed. They're more sure of themselves, and their self-esteem is low. So I like when they come in September, a little scared, intimidated, and then in May, they're full of energy and so positive and ready to share and give to others. So that's my story.
Thank you, Linda. Chantel, welcome.
Hi.
You missed the beginning. You didn't miss much though.
Yeah, that's okay.
But
I'm sorry I'm late.
I figured you guys were probably missing some pool time and some beach time by being here today, so I brought the pool and the beach to you. So you have to ride the whale, right? And you're going to tell me your name, your position in your district, and I want you guys to share a challenge that you may have, and a reward that you've experienced as a bilingual teacher.
Okay.
All right. What's on? All right, Jess.
I'm invited.
Hi. Good morning. My name is Jessica Cotto. I'm a first grade bilingual teacher. This will be my 10th year teaching here in Bilingual Public Schools. I started with my sister and mentor, Shirley. The challenge has always been not always having access to the correct tools in Spanish in our district. It's always been, do you have that in Spanish? And the answer's been, sorry. Thankfully, we're starting to get those tools in and we're using them properly. Like Shirley had said, having that one language in the classroom, that first native language, has helped out a lot. Not only towards students, but towards me, giving me that ease, that calm of that I will have the time to do what I have to do to get them where they need to be. And just in that one language and not flip-flopping with two languages in the time crunch. That's been very, very helpful. And hearing you talk, I think we're related, or you've been talking to someone.
I'm going to find
everything
I'm
you
Mercado,
said.
she's Mercado.
I went to La Inter en Arecibo
You
just
did?
as well, like got my BA there.
That's awesome.
Wow. I
find
came
out.
here, I
Yes.
started working on pennies. Yes, I'm a teacher.
Similar,
My BA is in
similar
ESL.
journeys.
Yes.
Nice.
So it's like
Very cool.
we're really good.
We will have an ancestry meeting after this.
Thank you. Thank you. You ready, Chantel?
Oh, I'm next?
You're
Oh,
next.
okay. Yeah?
Yes.
Alright. I can't put it down. She's shy.
That's okay. That's okay.
So, I'm Chantel. I'm a first grade bilingual teacher. This is my 3rd year here in Thailand, but actually going on the 4th. But it's my 6th year teaching. One of the biggest challenges is, like Jess said, having the proper resources. It's really hard when you don't find things in Spanish and you really need them. So you end up having to make them yourself, and it takes up more time, and sometimes you just get frustrated because you can't get the Microsoft Word to work properly, and you're just like, okay, it's not positioning right. But at the same time, one of the biggest rewards is just seeing the way the kids grow, especially in first grade. They make a lot of growth, and they come in barely reading, barely writing, and then by the end, it's just like they're reading stories, and they're answering questions, they're writing, and they're excited to do it. So it's exciting just to see that. And that's it.
I have to say, first grade is probably one of the most difficult grades to teach. Because this is it's like the stakes are high for first grade teachers. They got to be reading by the end of the school year. Like, so kudos to you guys, my hat's off.
They have to be
to you. They should be reading by the end of kindergarten. But first grade, that's the crucial year where they start learning the comprehension. They start, using all those reading skills that they're gonna, All right. So
well, before, because of the language and stuff, some of them were not. They were coming in not reading.
Right.
So
right.
It was
So let me tell you a little bit about how I came about choosing this topic. I'm working on a master's in reading at Rowan, and I'm taking a course right now called Supervision and Administration of Reading Programs. So that's a course I'm taking towards my master's in reading. I'm going to have a reading specialist degree, and I absolutely love this degree that I chose. It's actually the second major that I've chosen. I was a TESOL major. And what happened was this. I started working as a bilingual teacher. And within a few weeks, I noticed, wow, these kids can't read. They're low readers. And I felt overwhelmed because I wasn't sure how to reach them. I wasn't sure how to teach them how to become better readers. Yes, I was following everything my mentor, and I was, doing everything I was supposed to do, but these kids were still not reading. And I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So that's why I chose this degree. And it's interesting because I sat with Andrea Evans a couple of days before she left, and she didn't tell me she was leaving. She didn't tell me, but I asked her why, because she said to me, the first she said, you're doing the same major I did at Rowan. I'm like, really? And I was curious. I was like, so why did you choose this major, Andrea? And she said to me, Joel, when I was an elementary school teacher, I was losing these kids. I didn't know how to teach them. I didn't know what to do. I was at a loss. These kids could not read. I didn't know what to do. So that's why I went into that major. And that's why I chose this major. But more so, I chose it because I felt like there was this huge reading gap. When you compare bilingual students' reading achievement to monolingual achievement, there's a huge gap. And in both. I'm going to show you that. In both. And I feel that it shouldn't be. And I want to get to the bottom of that. I want to find out why our bilingual kids are so low with reading Spanish and English. So I did a little needs assessment to figure out what our school and our district needs. And obviously, there are those factors that we all know. We have a high population of ELLs and bilingual students. I think Salvatore is probably going to be the school, or is the school, with the largest percentage of English language learners. And it's going to be this year the biggest bilingual school, because we're going to have K through 5, and I think Johnson's going to do K through 3. So, and this is a true neighborhood school. And all these kids around here, which are primarily Hispanic, migrant workers, they come here. I had 80% of my students walked to school. So I believe that this is probably going to be the school with the largest percentage, or is, with English language learners and bilingual students. So that's the first thing I was thinking. All right. And then I'm part of the park committee, and we did a teacher survey here. And one of the things that they wanted professional development in was in vertical articulation. And vertical articulation, basically, if I can explain it in very simple terms, I'm a third grade teacher, so I'm not only thinking about what my students need in 3rd grade, I'm thinking about what did they learn in 2nd, what do they need for 4th. So, and that includes vocabulary, high academic language, and this helps with that. Because you're exposing kids to that high academic language. After you do this with them, by the end of the school year, they're going to know what a strategy is. They're going to understand fluidez, agudez, usando los sonidos al principio, al final. Van a saber comprensión. ¿Qué quiere decir comprensión? ¿Qué es una meta? What's a goal? They're going to know all that language that they need to be successful in 4th. And if from kindergarten we're doing CAFÉ, bam, 1st grade they're ready for it. 2nd grade they're even better at it. 3rd grade, 4th grade, forget it. By 5th grade, they'll be able to teach CAFÉ.
Yes.
They'll be able to explain it. And you would be surprised. These kids, they catch on to these words, to these vocabularies. They know what a good fit book is. They know the vocabulary. If you use it in your everyday language, and if you repeat it a lot, and you focus on making sure they understand what they're learning, that metacognitive, making sure they know that, to think about how they're thinking about learning. They get it, and it happens. So the second one, student data. Our bilingual students lag behind in reading. So in your paperwork, and I think I copied it in, no, it's the one that says, it's this one. It's this one, and I did it in black and white, but I realized afterwards that you need it in color. So if you can just pass one around, there's probably going to be extra ones. And this will be a great resource for you. This is a Fontes and Pinnell, expectations, level expectations for grade level. So if you look at that, in 1st grade, a student coming into you in the beginning of the school year, September, should be at a DE level. That's where they're meeting the expectations. If they're at C, they're approaching expectations and they need some intervention. If they're below C, they do not meet expectations and they need intensive intervention. All right? So I'm looking at 3rd grade. My kids should be coming in, and this is in any language, Spanish or Spanish, preferably. They should be coming in at an M or N. Okay? So these are my students. Okay? I have 21 students. I had 21, but you can tell that there are some numbers missing here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's because I took out any students that were classified. Because I didn't think it was fair to count them in the data.
Right.
Any kids that were classified, any kids that had 504, IEP, that were special ed, anything like that, I took them out. So these are just kids that have passed on. They've been with us since kindergarten at Men's. You can tell your years in our bilingual program. 4, I have 2 kids because they were retained before have been in the program for 5 years. All right. 4 or 5 years in the program. I had only 2 kids. 3 that were at M. The rest were very low. Most of them were reading out of 1st grade, maybe beginning 2nd grade level. Okay? And this is after 4 or 5 years in the program.
You're going to do the same for this year too? You're going to keep track?
Yes.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens with the appointments.
Yes.
To see it.
It's going to be really interesting.
And then we can compare the data.
Right. Now, some cautions about the data. Obviously, it's not comprehensive. I'm only looking into their reading level. That's it. That's it. So it's not a multiple measures kind of thing. So we have to be cautious about this. We know that there are a lot of factors, many factors, that can affect student achievement. So we have to take that into consideration too. So that's the next thing. I'll bring you to this. Let's turn and talk. Use the stickies that you have there and think about what are other factors. Why do you think that my students got to me in 3rd grade and that they're so low? What are different factors that you think contribute to low reading achievement?
2 years ago, the data. That was
That was
based
last
on
year.
your data.
That's last year.
Based on your data, or just based on our experience?
Based on your, well, I'm giving you the data from my kids.
Right.
And that's overall. Kids are coming in at low reading levels in bilingual in general. Why do you think they come in at low levels of reading? I mean, we're gonna like improvise here. When you're done with your sticky, you can put it on this side.
Mobility, yes.
You can talk amongst each other if you want. You can participate too if you want. You just want them to? Okay. All right, cool.
I think what they think.
That is true. A lot of our students go back and forth. She just turned to.
Is she yours or is she?
No, this is my niece.
It's your niece.
Yeah, and those are the ones that live with me. Yeah. No, no, they're not. My baby's 15.
Are they,
Oh,
are
really?
they like foster
Okay.
foster kids or
No, that is the. Two of them came here last year. Jonathan and Kiki. They were the homeless family. And they came in the shelter and I took them out. But she's 5 of them. But she's at a point. So she's at a point
good for them?
have these. No,
Good thing they have you.
I'm pulling my hair.
Are you?
Listen, this has been one adventurous summer.
Whenever you're ready.
But I think we're changing in language too, because it was one of those things one time. Oh, we're going up there? We're going up there?
I can put it up for you if you're
We're
done.
gonna put it up where?
On the left hand side.
Oh, okay. I thought you said we are gonna share it.
Okay. So why do you think most of our bilingual students lag behind reading? Inconsistent native language instruction in previous years.
Can I explain that, or?
Yes, explain that.
Well, meaning, in previous years, you would have, for example, a kindergarten teacher who taught maybe, native language instruction. They would go to first grade and they would decide, okay, we're going to do English language instruction, and then they went to second grade, and this, it was just there was like
Kind
no
of back and forth, no
right.
consistency.
Mm-hmm. And also there was no, in my opinion, of course, I felt there was no clear, how can I say, criteria to have kids transition between Spanish reading and English reading. I use different criteria than the teacher before me or the teacher above me.
That's a big question.
And it
When
was,
do you transition?
Exactly. And so I felt like,
Right. And that's why.
and even between those.
And that's part of the vertical articulation too. I think that's why we have Dr. Negrin here. Because what I do is I think that I know the student should transition. I have an idea that these kids are ready. Their reading comprehension in Spanish is pretty good. It's good, So I communicate with Dr. Negrin and I send my data. This is what I'm seeing. Can we meet? And then we'll meet up and then Well, I think that that's part of being all on the same page. I think that that's, if we all did that, I think that we're all, because I think it's hard just for us to like figure it out on our own. We have an idea, a good idea, because we're experienced and we have the knowledge, but.
A general guideline for that would be, is the student at or, closely approximating grade level in their native language, and where are they on the access? If they're around about a 4, then that might be a good place where we can start looking at the transition, but I still do like to do like I did with Joel this year, and I would do with with anybody is, he would get in touch with me and say, I have these students, let's take a look at their data, and I did that with a few others also, mainly lower grades, to just sit down with them and go through student by student and see kind of where they fall on that and where we think that they're best.
And I think the access test provides so much information that we usually, I look at it because that was part of what I utilized to determine if the child was ready to be transitioned.
Exactly.
Multiple criteria, of course, grades, if they were, very close to grade level or on grade level in their native language.
Right.
Input from the ESL teacher, and
the access also, the next thing about that is it does break down. You have your overall score, but then you also have a literacy score. It's a positive rating.
And that's what
Then you have the broken down reading and writing scores. You have their productive versus receptive. You have all of those things, and so it really does give you a very clear picture of what that student is able to do in English. So between all of those things, what they're doing in the L1 and what they can do in the L2, that gives you, that gives you the wherewithal to, to make an intelligent decision. But I think it does need to be something that we
all
sit down and discuss. We all do.
Exactly.
Because there are a lot of nuances in that, and every student is different.
Right, absolutely.
And also the fact that when you're a first-year teacher, you don't have all that data that you need to make that transition.
Or the instincts.
Yes, or the instincts.
Right.
So you take all of that.
Your first grade. Your first year teacher.
Yeah.
I was so overwhelmed that first year, let me tell you.
What does this mean?
Yes. Oh yeah, they're like throwing out acronyms at me like the first year. I'm like, okay. I'm like jotting them down so later on I could look them up. Google it. DRA and RTI and all this stuff.
Yeah. And tier 1, tier 2.
Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Yes.
Frequent changes in language and frequent changes in curriculum. Does anybody want to elaborate on that? Chantel? Relocating, migrant farm workers, mobility, inconsistency. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of students that they're back and forth. And personal experience, my parents were the same way.
Yeah,
My parents, Mel, my parents were the same way. Between the ages of 10 and 16, I didn't complete one grade completely in one place. Because my parents weren't sure if they were going to live in Puerto Rico or in Vietnam. Luckily, I had a really strong foundation in reading and writing in English. So I think I was able to transition to Spanish a lot quicker. But I imagine if I didn't have a strong foundation in English, I would have floundered. Because over there, they don't have a bilingual program.
No. Private schools do.
Private schools do. Right? So I was lucky that I had that foundation and I was never held back. But I didn't finish one grade in one place. So, but yeah, our students are like that. You'll have them for a couple of months and then they'll come back and they'll come one day and say, oh, we're going back to Mexico, we're moving back to Puerto Rico. What do you mean? And I'm like, Dad found a job or something like that. So that affects.
Yeah, that's probably one of my challenges as well. When I hear that and the child tells me I'm relocating, I'm like, no, because you're growing. You're improving and you just got it. I'm like, no. And then they pick up and they leave and you don't know, where they're going exactly and, they're going to be able to.
And that a lot of times, they lose a lot of it too.
Yeah.
Just in the going back and forth.
Right, me
And
too.
a lot of times they come back 2 years later, they've lost a lot.
Or even the same year. I've had them come back the same year. And
Right,
you're just like, well, we did that at the beginning of the year.
right.
And it's already gone.
Chantel, did you want to elaborate on yours? Frequent changes in language, frequent changes in curriculum?
just like she was saying, like 1 year they would have English, 1 year Spanish, 1 year English. So it kind of like went, you know, whatever way. And the curriculum, well, it's like sometimes they'll train us on one thing and they'll say, okay, use this. Then the next thing is like, okay, now use this. So it's like we're kind of like floating in between. Okay, what do we use? Do we use this? Do we use that? What is it that we're doing?
I know, and it was a challenge. I was lucky because I was part of the committee that chose the reading series, so I had a kind of head start because I was able to like really study it and look at it, and I wrote the pacing charts and everything. So, but I can imagine you guys have just got and say, here, do journeys, and we did that little turnkey. We did that little quick turnkey, you know, and really they didn't talk about senderos, even though it's the same thing. But still, I would have liked to have gotten together with the bilingual teachers and gone over the components of senderos. And we could still do that. That could be maybe like that could maybe be a PD that we do like this coming year. We get together and talk about all the components and where to find things. Because senderos is very complex. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Especially online. Like you
There's
go
a
online
lot of stuff in there.
Overwhelmed.
More than you need. And that's why we chose it, because all the other series that we were looking at, first of all, none of them sent Spanish. Journeys was the only one that sent senderos. All the other ones, they said, oh, we're working on a Spanish version, but it's not ready yet. So senderos was the only one we figured, you know what, there's enough here for teachers to really grab and do what they need to do. But there's also the potential that they can get overwhelmed because there's so much stuff.
So much.
Yeah.
And if you don't know about it, you're just like looking, you find it like last minute, you're like, oh, I gotta use that. Oh.
Right. All right, so that was great. I think you guys came up with a lot of really good reasons. So we talked about this a little bit. Why should we focus on developing Spanish literacy skills for transitioning bilingual students to English instruction? So let's talk about what the research tells us. Right? It's kind of, it is for me, after reading the research, and I'll be honest with you, when I first started, you know, my background is teaching English as a second language. My background is that. So I thought, they gotta learn English. Oh my God, they gotta learn English. Oh my God, if they don't learn English, oh my God. But I wasn't aware of until I started getting into like the research and reading and taking this master's and really just focusing on finding out what is happening out there in the world and what's working, what's not working. Okay? And just a little side note. I went to the NEA conference with Shirley in Denver, and I shared this with Joanne, with Dr. and I met a lot of bilingual teachers from all over the states. And I met this bilingual teacher in California, and he was a first grade bilingual teacher. And I asked him, would you ever transition a child to English in first grade? No. No, never. Kindergarten first, maybe in the middle of second, maybe, depending on the student, depending on the progress. But it was like a no-brainer for him. You didn't have to think about it. So before I go into the research, I want to talk about different kinds of research that's out there, types of research. And this is from the Krashen article. Stephen Krashen, major. We love Krashen. He's a big advocate for bilingual education and second language acquisition. He's written a lot extensively. So he talks about research that is narrative or vote counting. That's where the reviewer collects all this research, all these studies, you know, and basically just says, okay, 40% agree that you should do English only. 50% think that you should do transitional program or whatever. And then 10% say this. That's it. So it's not very in-depth. But Krashen, he proposes looking into meta-analysis research reviews, which is more complex. It's more comprehensive because they take into consideration a lot more. They use powerful statistical techniques which controls for numerous variables. So they take into consideration sample size, program model, student and teacher characteristics, research design, duration of study, and a lot more. So it's a lot more comprehensive. So that's the kind of research I was looking into. And this is what I found out. So I agreed with Slavin, Chung, Krashen, and Proctor, who also agreed that oral proficiency in the first language facilitates the literacy development in English. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If you're proficient in your native language, it's going to be a lot easier for you to learn another language, whether it's English or any other language. Also, Proctor and his gang, his other peeps, they conducted a longitudinal study, which is like a long-term, over a series of years. And they found, this is very interesting, they found that bilingual students with high Spanish vocabulary proficiency becomes better English readers. And it makes sense because if they have this high academic vocabulary in Spanish, 30% of the words are cognates. So when they're reading English, they're not struggling with making meaning. They're more focused on reading and being fluent readers. And it's easier for them to understand. And then they're using the strategies that we taught them in Spanish because they transferred to English.
Right.
So that's what I found out. And then some more evidence from the National Literacy Panel. Tapping into first language literacy can confer advantages of ELLs. Students are able to take advantage of higher vocabulary skills, like I mentioned, in their first language, such as the ability to provide formal definitions and interpret metaphors when speaking the LT. And students take advantage of cognitive relationships. I mentioned that 30%, all the big words that students need to know, 30% of those words have a cognitive. Right? So, and that's basically a precursor to reading comprehension. Right. So using the data, so I got all this information, I got my raw data from my students, I thought about the survey that we did, and I did all my research, and it shows me that there's a disproportionate amount of bilingual students who are below reading level. That's a no-brainer. And the data suggests that we need to find a way to implement more intentional and tailored reading instruction that will help our students become proficient Spanish readers, and by doing so, the research indicates that we'll be better prepared to transition to English. That's what all that is telling me. That's where CAFÉ comes in. So the CAFÉ reading system provides a solution to help our students meet their reading goals.
I like the accent. Yeah. Call it environment.
So here's how. How many have been using it? So we started using it, right? You haven't started using it yet? Okay. So basically, this is the CAFÉ menu. Obviously, I didn't find one in Spanish, and I actually went to my room this morning and took a picture of mine, but I didn't get a chance to paste it here. But yours will be in Spanish.
They said they can always take a tour if they'd like to, right?
I'm sorry?
A tour.
They can take a tour if they'd like to after this.
Exactly. Yes, we can go over there and check it out. So the CAFÉ system. Basically, CAFÉ is an acronym for comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expand vocabulary. And I believe you have the CAFÉ menus in front of you in Spanish. Tenemos comprensión, entiendo lo que leo, agudeza, puedo leer las palabras, fluidez, puedo leer con precisión, expresión y comprender lo que leo, y expansión de vocabulario. Sé, encuentro, y utilizo palabras interesantes. That's all you're going to have on your board the first day of school. That's it. You're going to have, el menú café de lectura, and then the 4 goals. That's all you're going to have at the beginning of the school year. All right? Because as you introduce all those skills to them, then you start putting them up. All right? And the beauty of this, you're probably teaching already all these skills. If you're not doing CAFÉ, you probably are. All right, in your own way, you're teaching these skills. However, this provides intense, focused instruction, and it enables students to retrieve and remember the skills they're working on because they're setting goals. It's not like you're teaching a skill and you're like, go work on it. you're actually sitting down and you're like, okay, what's your goal? Your goal for this week is you're going to work on, using beginning and ending sentences. Que vas a practicar esto cuando leas independientemente y ya sabes, vamos a reunirnos el viernes para leer de nuevo y yo voy a ver cómo vas con eso. Bien? So they know they have a goal, and then they take a sticky. I'm going to give you guys another gift. They take a sticky, they write their name, and they go and they put it under, I'm working on it. So their name is on there. And they see it. And plus, you can do something extra that I'm going to give you another little gift. Where you can give them like a bookmarker. You can get a bookmarker, and they have that bookmarker, and you put their name on it, and you put their goal, and when they complete it. And they love getting bookmarkers with their names on it. Oh my God, Mr. Rubin's gave me a bookmarker. So this is how it starts, okay? Before we continue talking about the core elements of CAFÉ, let's talk about how the sisters came up with it. So Gail Bushy and Joan Moser, they're the two women that came up with the system. And they were just like us. They were struggling with how do we provide focused instruction, reading instruction, where kids can remember the skills, they can retrieve them, they can practice them, know what they're doing, and progress. Because that's the goal. We're not really teaching the story. We're teaching students to become better readers. The goal is for them to move up the ladder and become grade level proficient. And the way we're going to do that is by doing one-on-one, intense, focused, scaffolded instruction. And that's what CAFÉ helps you do. So when they were developing the system, they were thinking about teachers and how they can help us organize assessment data so it truly informs our instruction, track each child's strengths and goals, thereby maximizing time with him or her, create flexible groups of students all focused on a specific reading strategy, and help students remember and retrieve the reading strategies they learned. All right, so let's say they forgot, oh, I forgot. What am I working on? They run up to the board. Hey, yeah, I'm working on this thing. When I understand, oh yeah, that's what my bookmarker says. I'm working on that. Okay. Which is, a lot of, when you're teaching these strategies and you don't have a system like this, you really don't do that. So if you think about it, you're teaching the strategies, but how do we know that the kids are remembering them? So this is a way of presenting this to them that they can easily access. This was very interesting to me. Research based for CAFÉ. So when they were doing this, they did a lot of research too. In the back of the book, it has like 3 or 4 pages of the references. So they did a lot of research. And they began with this guy, Emmett Betts, who spoke of matching readers with appropriate text that they could read independently. 1946. Way ahead of his time. He felt, kids need to have leveled books that are at their level, that they can read independently in order for them to become better readers. And then Preston Taylor, Pearson Clark, and Walpole found that the most effective classroom instruction includes whole group, small group, and one-on-one instruction. And check this out what he said. The more whole group instruction, the lower the academic achievement.
Right.
So most of your instruction should be small groups or one-on-one. My whole group lessons are very quick. Mini lesson, I teach, I model, they practice, turn and talk, we share. All right, go do it on your own, and I conference with them. That's where I get most progress when I do one-on-one conferences with students, or when I do small group strategy lessons. And we're going to talk about how we can incorporate that into our, because I know you guys are probably thinking, how am I going to do this with like, an hour, and I have like 24 students, and but we'll talk more about that. So these are the core elements for CAFÉ. The teacher keeps a notebook with a few record-keeping forms. That's important because it informs your teaching. It helps you remember what you're working working on with the student. Because God knows, I'm not going to remember 24 kids. I'm not going to remember that I was working with Frank, I was working on fluency, that I was working with, if I don't write some notes about it. So it's important to have some sort of record keeping. All right? Children meet with teachers during literacy workshop conferences, one-on-one conferences to be assessed, to receive focused, explicit instruction, to set goals, and to follow up on progress. All right, so Johnny set a goal. Okay, you're going to work on finding text clues within the sentence to help you figure out the meaning of words you don't know. All right, so you're going to work on this for the next couple of days. When we meet on Friday, I'm going to see how you're working on that. So he knows already. Next time I meet with Mr. Bermudez, we're going to work on that. So he's going to be focused on that, hopefully. And the teacher plans small group instruction based on clusters of students with similar needs in one of the CAFÉ categories. One of the most important components is a one-on-one. Like I said, for me, that's where I reach students quickest, because it's focused, it's tailored just for them. You know, it's just for them, and I'm working on what they need. So that's where I reach students the most. Okay, so let's talk about the record keeping forms. And I'm going to confess something to you guys right now. My first year, I didn't use any forms because I was overwhelmed with everything. You know how it is,
Right.
especially you're starting out. You've never been an elementary school teacher. You're coming out from middle school, or your background is teaching ESL. I didn't have a background of teaching elementary science, math, social studies, all that stuff. So, you know, my mentor's like, oh, by the way, you need to do this, CAFÉ. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do it. So I read the book, and I'm like, I'm not gonna deal with the forms right now. I'm gonna take it easy. I'm gonna focus on, I'm gonna write notes. I'm gonna create my own way of doing it. All right. So all I had a binder like this. I had a section for each student with lined paper. I would bring them up, reading conference with Frank, date, and write my notes. And that's how I did it. The forms at that point were a little too overwhelming. So little by little, I started incorporating them into my teaching. So last year by the end of last year, I was doing the keeping track form, which I'm going to show you, and the individual conference form. All right? So this is the keeping track form that you have a copy of it in your packet. It's not filled out like this. But I love this form because it's a
Simple.
It's simple. It's a snapshot. You put the name of all your students and the days that you conference with them for reading and for writing. So that's the first thing you look at, and you're like, okay, Jagra, last time I conferenced with this was this date. All right, I need to conference with him. And I remember that he was working on this. You look at your notes, and that's a good form. It's very simple to maintain. The next form, this is one I'm using now. There are two different versions of it. There's a reading conference form without the icons, which is the one that I'm using.
You don't like the icons?
I like the icons. It's a little too busy for me. But I know what the icons mean, so I know what I need to put in.
Okay.
The pencil means jot down the title of the text they're reading.
Right.
The I is observe. What do I notice related to the goal that we're working on?
Right.
The student. And then the little head with the thinking. Okay, think. Do I teach, reinforce what we planned yesterday, or do I change the plan based on what I see today? So your one-on-one conference is very focused. All right, I'm working with Frank on fluency. And I've been working with him on that for a couple of days. I think he's got it. I think he's doing better with it. You know what? I think I want to work with him on something different. So I end the conference with a new goal for him. All right, so Frank, I want you to think about this now. You know, think about finding context clues for words that you don't mean in the sentence. Right? The author always gives you some other words in the sentence that help you figure out those words that you don't understand. Right? So he puts his goal. I give him his bookmarker, he writes his name, and he puts it under comprehension. So actually, he takes it off of fluency and puts it on comprehension because now you're going to be working on comprehension. Right? So those are, I'm going to be using these forms this year. I used them last year as well. And this one is one I didn't use last year. I started towards the end of the year. I'm going to try to do it more often this year. I'm going to try to incorporate it in the beginning of the school year. And this is strategy groups and instruction. So basically what you have here is you have the names of your group, okay? The dates that you met with them and what you worked on with them. What strategy you worked on. And let me say something. This is not a script. And let me tell you, my notes don't look this neat. I'm probably the only one that can understand what I write on here. If somebody came in and tried to read it.
Right.
So, this is really neat. Like this, my notes, I understand them, I know what I'm working on, but let's be realistic. You adjusted to your needs, your classroom needs, and your student needs. And they say it in the book. This is not a script. You don't have to follow this word for word. Take these forms. If you want to use them the way they are, use them. If you want to create a new one or adjust it to fit your needs, go for it.
I have a question. You fill that out. I would fill it out after I work on the strategy, right? Or is it like a plan to?
Okay, so you would have this filled out, okay, and then you put the date.
Right.
You know what you're gonna model something, so you put that strategy in work on.
Okay.
Okay.
So then it's like it's before.
It would be before.
It would be before.
Before.
If I could share,
Yes.
what I did, I started to use the CAFÉ towards like the middle of the school year when I was learning a little bit more. I used the journeys, whatever strategy I was going to use for those level groups.
Yes. Actually, you know what? You bring up a great point that I was going to talk about, but we can talk about that right now. The comprehension skills, you're doing them. If you're following senderos, you're doing them already.
Right.
And I had that conversation with Andrea. She's like, you're doing that. You're doing the comprehension ones already. So let's say you're doing a 1 week. You're doing story structure, which would be reconocer elementos del cuento, género, personaje, escenario, trama, conflicto, solución. So you're working in senderos. You're working on that already.
Right.
So all you have to do is follow senderos with the story, model it, teach it, have them practice, and you have the card up here already with the strategy. At the end of the week, when you're done with that strategy, get your popsicle. However you pick students, I grab my popsicle sticks. Frank, you have the honor of the strategy that you're working on this week. He's all excited. He gets it. So the comprehension ones you're already doing.
Right.
It's finding the time to do the other ones.
Right.
That's going to be tricky. And I mostly do it during small group time.
Right.
All right. So that's the easy part. In terms of the senderos, is it correlates with the comprehension. I know this is kind of, and I think it was small. Oh, actually, you know what? Did I put the page? This one's on page 76, 77.
Okay.
This one I forgot to put the
Yeah, I realized it says model.
So one-on-one conferencing. That is the core of CAFÉ. So what are some ways that conferencing with students one-on-one is important and beneficial? Let's think about that. And jot down some ideas on your sticky notes. Why is one-on-one conferencing important? That here. so many reasons that we should.
How many do you want us to write?
I just write one.
Just, okay.
1 or 2.
Yeah, because she's. No, it's my niece. This is usually her nap time. She's like, this is my only niece. She's my first niece, so she's, yeah, this is my little baby. I love them all, but she's my princess because I didn't have a
You're
girl.
still working on your dress, or you did already?
No, it's up
Okay.
there. Did you put yours up there already?
I'm sorry, she walked away.
Oh, you did.
Did you want to put something up there? What are some ways that conferencing students one-on-one is important and beneficial? While Mel is working on hers, gives you insight of students' personal experience with reading. I like that.
That's my favorite. I mean, I think knowing that is so important. I think it's, you know, you're in a setting in which, you know, the student feels comfortable to share. And knowing about their experiences with reading, if they've had any, if they don't have any books at home, if nobody sits down to read with them, all of those things are so important so you can kind of figure out, you know.
And you can better approach that on a one-on-one.
Oh, absolutely.
They're more apt to
You
sharing
don't,
all that.
exactly. You don't want to talk about that in front of everyone.
But definitely knowing your students' attitudes towards reading. Do they like reading? What kind of books do they like reading? That's very important too.
And also, it gives me an opportunity to share with them my experiences with reading, and hopefully, you know, build that connection that's so important between teacher and student.
Exactly.
They can make them feel special too.
Yeah,
because they have that, a lot of kids, parents don't have the time to have that one-on-one with them at home, especially if there's other siblings involved. So it's for the teacher to sit there and actually, you know, they feel special. They actually feel like,
They really do.
yeah. So
Every day.
yeah.
Please conference with me, please conference with me.
No, it means a lot to them. It really
It
does.
does. They really
Yeah.
feel special.
Yeah.
So yeah, increased self-esteem. I'm sorry?
Which leads to?
Increased self-esteem as a result of individual focus.
That's right.
It's really important. Yeah. Motivate. It allows you to better focus on the student and give them encouragement. Good. It's targeted towards individualized student needs. Excellent. Reflection of a better understanding of how much they understand. Summarize what, how can they relate to in real life experiences. Like Shirley was saying, you can use self to world connections with them as you're reading. So let's see what else we have here. So you confer with students to help them work towards individual goals. That's the purpose for CAFÉ and doing one-on-one. Aside from all of that you guys said, it's also to help them set goals for reading.
Right.
Right? And they post their goals on the whole class board to remind them which one they're working on. And a successful conference is focused and tailored to the students' needs. And at the end, you give them a reminder of their goal, which is a bookmarker or anything that you want to give them. But I want to go back to this one. A successful conference is focused and tailored to the students' needs. As teachers, I know starting out, we kind of like want to touch on everything. You know,
Right.
when we're teaching a story,
Right.
let's talk about everything. Let's talk about the characters.
Yeah.
But the goal for this is to be really focused. Everything is about that strategy. Everything is about that skill.
I think that's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. That is the hardest part, because you want to ask some other questions about the plot, about the setting, stuff like that, but you have to keep it focused. If you're working on using punctuation to better their accuracy or fluency, that's it. Just focus on that. That's it. That's hard. It's hard, but you can incorporate some other elements of the story with that as well. And we're gonna see some examples of some conferences, and I'm gonna show you my ideas about that. So we're gonna go quickly through this sheet that you have, coaching toward a target. Okay, so so coaching towards a target. Number one, check your calendar for appointments. I don't use a calendar. You know why I don't use a calendar? Because if you put up a calendar, and you put up the calendar and you're like, okay, Tuesday I'm gonna conference with Joey, Frank, and Estelle. So much happens during the week. And then you've committed yourself to conferencing with those kids on that day. They're gonna be really upset. These kids are they're gonna be bummed. Yeah. If you wrote on that calendar that you're gonna conference me, and then you're like, are you kidding me? So what? There's an assembly. I want you to conference with me.
Yes.
What do you mean you have a child study team meeting?
Right.
No.
Right.
So I base it on this one.
Right.
I base it on this one. I look at this and I think, when was the last time I met with them? Which are the kids that need me the most? Obviously, you're going to meet most with the students that need more help. So let's talk about that for a second, about instructional fairness. All right? There was a time that I thought, oh, I gotta meet with all the students the same amount of time, because that's the fair thing to do. But that's not the case. We know that we need to focus on, you're going to meet more with your kids that are lower, and the ones that are higher, you probably won't meet with them as much. You will, but they'll be doing other stuff. You find stuff for them to do. They can do more independent stuff, but you need to really focus on bringing up those lower level kids up to where they should be, so you have to spend more time with them.
Fair versus equal.
Exactly.
Say that again. Fair versus equal.
Fair
Yes.
versus equal. Right? So you're actually being fair, and you're providing the same instruction to all your students because you're targeting their needs.
Right.
Not so much how much time you spend with all of them. So prepare. Obviously you have to prepare. Look at your notes from the last conference that you had. What did you work on? Just to know where you're going. 3, the student sits down. Okay, Frank, quiero que me leas este libro. Okay. Y recuérdate que el lunes estamos trabajando con fluidez. Y te recuerda que yo te enseñé una estrategia para tú usar el sonido principal y el final. Lee para ver. Quiero ver cómo vas con eso. Okay. So he starts reading. I notice he's still struggling. All right. So I coach. I model again for him how to do it, and I have him practice. All right. So that's that part. And I'm recording this on the sheet. Frank is still working on beginning sounds. He's struggling still a little bit. Blah blah. Okay. Reinforce and teach. All right. So he notado, Frank, que está todavía un poquito cortando las palabras al final. Recuérdate que tienes que pensar en toda la palabra, porque a veces lo que hacemos es que miramos al principio de la palabra y ya creemos que sabemos la palabra y nos inventamos una palabra que ni es la que es. How many students do that? Yeah, they read the first sound and they're like, I know what this is, and they don't read the ending of it. I have a lot of kids that do that. All right? So Frank, quiero que practiques de nuevo. Practícalo ahora. Te voy a enseñar cómo hacerlo de nuevo. All right? And then, okay, tu meta va a seguir siendo esto. Quiero que trabajes fuerte con esto. Te voy a dar bookmarker, te voy a dar el sticky, pon tu nombre en fluidez para que tú sepas que estás trabajando todavía en fluidez. All right, so he goes, he's happy with his little bookmarker, he puts it in his book, and he's going to be working on that until the next time conference. So reinforced teaching, explicit explanation, modeling, thinking aloud, offering advice. ¿Sabes lo que puedes hacer, Frank? Mira, con tus dedos cubre la parte al final de la palabra. Pronuncia al principio. Muy bien. Ahora cubre el principio y pronuncia la parte. Ok, ahora ponlo todo junto. All right? So that's a good strategy I get done. All right? You practice, and then you plan, which is what I did. I said, Frank, estás todavía trabajando con esto, así que vamos a continuar enfocándonos en el sonido principal y el final para que puedas entender mejor lo que estás leyendo, porque sabes que un buen lector mira bien las palabras y pronuncia todo para que pueda entender el cuento mejor y poder comprender lo que está leyendo. So, and encourage him, and he goes, and he works. And that's it. We did the 7 steps already. Oh, and it's very important that at the beginning, like I did, I articulate the goal. Recuerda, Frank, que estabas trabajando en fluidez, en el sonido principal y el final. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Fluidez. Hopefully he'll tell me what it is. And then at the end, ¿cuál es tu meta? Que voy a usar el sonido principal y el final porque eso me va a ayudar a poder entender lo que estoy leyendo. Excelente.
What book did you use for CLI, the CLI?
I use CLI, but I use the Journeys readers. I use the Journeys books too.
The vocabulary.
Yeah, I use those. You can use anything that's at their level. You could. I would do the readers. The Journeys readers are the best to use for that.
Yeah, they're short.
They're short.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's basically a one-on-one conference. Very focused. I didn't talk about the story. I didn't talk about such as a character was happy because blah blah blah. It was all about the skill, the strategy. And this is the bookmark I'm going to give you guys. I did it in Spanish, but I'm going to give you guys. All right, so let's eavesdrop on some conferences. Obviously, I didn't find any in Spanish or in English, but it's the same components, the same thing. It's a no-brainer. It's a conversation you're having with the student, and you're just doing it in Spanish.
You're transferring your knowledge and skills from L2 to L1.
Yes.
There you go. Exactly. Now, one thing, I contacted the sisters through their website, and somebody responded. I don't know if it was them or their rep, because I asked them, are you planning on releasing Spanish version of CAFÉ and Daily 5? She emailed me back. She's like, as a matter of fact, Joel, at this moment, we're looking for a Spanish publisher to do just that. So it's going to happen. We're going to have this book and Daily 5 in Spanish, which is really good.
Missed opportunity right there.
They were knocking on your door.
I would have been your assistant.
All right. So as we're looking at these conferences, I want you to have something to write with. I want you to think about what's working in this conference. What's working? And what would you do differently? Okay?
All right.
The first one I found on YouTube.
Connections, remember the text to the reader. Fluent readers sound natural. Fluent readers understand what they are reading. Fluent readers like they are readers. Read like they are speaking.
Okay, so you're basically reading parts of it, and then you see, are you working on that? Have you been working on that? Okay, what's your title? Okay, let's see, let's open the book and see. Talk about it, with the vocabulary in it. Now let's read.
All morning now, Ashley's brother Butch had been reading the book. He kept saying, "Whoa," as he read. "What are you reading?" Ashley asked. "Go away, kids," Butch answered.
Okay, let's open and let's look. Okay, do you feel like you're reading fluently there? Why not? What's the problem? Why do you feel that really fluent?
Here, exclamation mark at it sounded like I was excited.
So you're not using
Expression.
okay, because you're still using all the explanations and you're gonna realize you're using expression, right?
He was
We need to ask, right? We want our book to sound interesting, right? Because we need like we speak, okay? And when we do that, it's like being really emotional, like really funny, really happy and excited, right? So it uses your explanation. Now let's try reading it with our expression then.
all morning long. Ashton's brother Butch had been reading a book. He kept saying, "Wow," and "cool," as he read. "What are you reading?" asked Ashton. "Oh, wait, yes," Butch answered.
You feel like you use better expression there this time? Okay. Alright, we're going to keep on working then with fluency. And you have to work on it. When you go out and read on your own, when you go to the reading station, you need to work on it. You want to put your sticking in with the fluency so you know that you're still working on that, okay? Alright, good job.
Okay,
That was extremely short.
that's it.
Oh, wow.
That's what it is.
I think that's what I'm going to struggle with.
That's what it should be. It should be very quick,
So not
focused.
even the entire book, just a section of the book.
You don't have to read the whole book.
Oh.
Now, what do you feel worked?
You know, I like the fact that she asked the student to kind of like evaluate herself,
Himself.
to kind of like figure out, how do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
You know, I think self-awareness. is very
Self-awareness,
important.
metacognitive kind of strategy, helping him think about his
Right.
own, the way he learns and his thinking. Cool. Anything else?
What I noticed, it was very clear, the table was organized, it was just focused on what you were gonna teach that student, that one book, that one strategy.
Yep.
It wasn't a clutter of papers or pencils or crayons, so that could be overstimulating for some students.
Mhm.
So it was
Environment,
just very
environment.
focused.
Cool.
I love that.
That's a good observation.
Your images on the cartolinas.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, that she had a little picture, text to self.
Yes.
I love that. And you know that our kids really respond to that. They really do. They respond to that. Did you see anything that worked?
Yeah, the way she had the like speaking, she had it big and different letters, different colors.
Uh-huh.
So that way the student knows that that's what they're stressing.
Yes.
So
Very good.
that's the most important part of it.
Excellent. I like that she used those la cartulina with all of the strategies and the goals.
Right. Did she pick the goal or did the student pick the goal?
He picked the goal. He picked the goal. She asked him, "What do you feel you need to work on? You need more help with?" And he said fluency. Did she? I forget now. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. Did she ask him what fluency is?
I
She
don't-
asked him in the beginning of the.
She did. She did. And Did he articulated it at the end?
He was trying to define and give her back the feedback, and that's where she was trying to pull that little conference with him to make sure there was understanding.
Anything you would do differently?
I don't know. I feel funny that he was reading the strategies. I don't know. Maybe I would have read it to him.
You can, and then have.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It's good if the child can articulate it himself, because that's a goal. You want them to be able to keep repeating it and listening to themselves saying it so that it sticks. Did she model?
Not in this video.
No, I didn't.
No, she didn't model. There wasn't explicit modeling. Like I would have had him read.
During the one-on-one though, because I thought that was during the whole group. Don't you
No,
do the
you still teach and you model during the one-on-one
Right.
too.
so you do it? Okay.
Yeah, you still do that. But what I would have done differently is I would have, first of all, I would have given him more encouragement. Like he said, "Whoa," I would say, "That's really cool." He said that.
Using expression.
Use expression there. Because remember, when he said he wasn't using expression, he said the other one with the exclamation point that he didn't like. He was starting to like, and I think I would have used a little more enthusiasm and a little more encouragement.
I didn't think she was very warm.
Huh?
I didn't feel like she was very warm.
No, she was kind of a little stiff.
Yeah.
She was a little like, she was like, all work, no play. Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like all very by the book.
We're here.
But I tend to be more, I love giving feedback, I love giving encouragement. Every time I meet with a student, I give them a praise and a push.
Right.
And I always start with the praise. You did this really good. Like, this was awesome that you did this like this. But you know what? I'm gonna encourage you now to do this. Read it again. I'll model how I did it. Like I would have modeled with what he read. And then I would have chosen another piece of the book and had him try it himself. That's what I would have done differently.
And I like the idea of at least sometimes having the students set goals, because I think one of the whole overarching reasons for being of CAFÉ is for students to be able to self-diagnose and self-correct and learn on their own. So you want to make sure, I mean, sometimes that's fun, like Joel was just saying, you did really well with this, now let's work on that. But other times it is good to let the students set the goal, because that is part of giving them that independence over their learning.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Oh yeah, and you should always pick the goal with the student. Pick it with them. I mean, obviously you're gonna be informed by your previous conferences and your experience with the child, but you want to give them that power that they're able to choose their own goal.
And that's hard to do sometimes.
That's hard to
Emotionally, that's hard to do.
It's really hard.
We'll redirect.
All right, so let's see another one. Now this one is from the CAFÉ website. And I have a membership. Okay. I love this. This is like the antithesis of what we just saw. The opposite.
Okay. This is what we'll be doing.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
That last book, we were working on reading an expression. So, I'd like to hear that again. Could you pick a book that you could use with expression? Footprints in the sand. Oh, I love this. I love colors. This one? Okay. I'm lost in like 2. Okay.
What's the title?
2. And this is your golden strategy, isn't it? Go with expression. Do you remember what that is? Where that fits in? What's the goal for read with expression and pacing? It's under fluency, isn't it? And what does that really mean? That you read words nice and smoothly. Okay, we'll read like we talk a little bit. Okay, I can't wait to hear this.
That would be me.
Voice goes up a little bit.
Under my I lost my tooth.
Have you ever lost a tooth? Have you tried?
It's convoluted.
Oh, way back then? Okay. Can you predict what's going to happen next? He's going to take a picture of what? You must tell this story. You're right. Oh, I love the way your voice sounds. I see that. That's good. What's he going to do? And he's going to find it? The tooth fairy. What do you think? Which one will be next? Okay. What? And it's right up there. I wonder. Wow, you really know that more about our tools in this room, don't you? Now, can I ask you something? Can you tell me the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story? What happened in the beginning?
He lost his teeth.
He lost his tooth, and then in the middle?
He takes his picture. He took a picture.
And why was he going to do that?
So he can don't take a teeth.
And then at the end of the story, what happens?
He wonders which tooth.
He wonders which tooth will be next. Which tooth do you think you're going to lose next? One of those, I bet so. Did you see Tate's back this morning? She has two.
This one is look. This one will look off.
They are. Oh, that's exciting. So what are you going to do when you lose your tooth? And what should you do with your camera?
I'm going to do that.
You're not going to?
I'm just going to get someone to keep example.
Oh, what a good idea. Then the tooth fairy will come.
So much different.
So what did you think was?
I personally enjoy, she gingerly would, when she wanted to stop, she didn't say stop. She didn't use that word. She used a hand gesture and would gingerly just put her hand and begin to ask questions that she needed reflection, that she needed to clarify, that she wanted his relationship about what he was reading.
I love that at the end there was text to self connections. I think that's really important. The feedback of what he's going to use towards himself, the self connection. In the future, when he loses his tooth, is it going to see and is he
Okay.
still on the boat? Comprehension, of course.
Okay.
Summarizing is so important, where our kids don't orally summarize what they understand. Beginning, the middle, the end. Sometimes they just cut to, this is what happened at the end.
Anything you saw, Chantal?
Yeah, at the beginning, I like that she let him choose a book because it was something that he was comfortable with, and
Yes.
it was like his choice.
His
So
choice.
it makes him a little more excited about it.
Anything you do differently? In my opinion.
She used too many strategies, right?
Huh?
She used too many strategies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I think this is what she was trying to do. Her goal was fluency, using the punctuation, all that stuff, and he was doing it, and she was happy about that he was doing it. I think she was trying to probe him to figure out what his next goal could be. Probably, but she never decided on one.
Fluency wasn't really an issue for him.
No, but she never decided on one, and she kind of like veered off a little bit. I would not have done that. I would have stayed a little more focused on the goal that we're working on, and I would have said, "You're doing really great with this. What do you think? You know, what's the beginning? What's the middle?" Then I would have stuck with that story structure or whatever, or character development, and then I would have chosen. I would have asked him, "Do you think you want to work with that? You want to work with like reading and trying to figure out the middle, the beginning, and the end of the stories you read? I mean, that could be your next goal. Okay, so what's your goal going to be?" That's where I think, that's what I would have done differently. I would have been a little bit more focused. I love her enthusiasm. Her enthusiasm was very infectious. Like, I would love to have a kindergarten teacher like that. But again, that's that kind of teacher in us that wants to kind of like ask all different types of questions to see, you know. But I think for this, it's got to be a little more focused.
Although the boy did well. He did handle it.
He did.
Yeah. I mean, he answered
He
everything.
did.
So.
He really did. Yes. But my issue is that if a supervisor comes in and asks the student, "What are you working on?
What are you learning?
Yeah.
What are you learning? What are you working on?" He's going to have like 5 different things he's going to think about.
But he may not say anything.
He might not say anything because he's confused.
And I was getting a little antsy as I'm watching this because I'm thinking back and I'm like, did I not get that right? You know, I thought that we were working on fluency, but maybe I missed
And
it.
she
What are we
changed
working
it.
on?
She
It
changed it.
Yes.
So that's the thing, you have to keep that in mind, that they have to have a clear picture of what they're working on. It's got to be very focused. So that if somebody, a stranger, comes into your classroom and says, you know, "Frank, what were you working on with Mrs. So-and-so?" "I was working on fluency."
And not just for that reason, but just because your students always need to know what they're working on.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
They need to have a clear understanding of what they're working on. Very good, you guys. I'm going to show a little higher level one.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
In your grade level,
Uh-huh.
when exactly do you implement your CAFÉ? Doing your reading, doing your writing?
Reading.
You do it during your...
Most of the comprehension strategies happen during whole group.
Okay, the longer 8-minute.
No, it's only 40 minutes, the whole group. I think it's only 40 minutes, I think, the whole group.
Okay.
And then the guided
Because
reading.
my
I was going to say, you might be coming from a different.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry.
So you have, and then you have the guided reading is an hour. You're supposed to take 3 groups of 20 minutes each. I try to do that, but sometimes it just happens 25 minutes, 2 groups. I always see my lower level kids every day. And then what I do is I kind of split it up. Like I have a schedule where I go from, you know, we have 1 through 6, day 1 through 6.
Right.
So days 1, 3, and 5, I'm seeing this group in a strategy or CAFÉ workshop.
Right.
All right? That's probably my middle higher group.
Right.
All right? And then days 2, 4, and 6, I switch it up and I do the first group, they're doing something else, and then the other groups, we're doing either guided reading group, strategy groups, or one-on-one conferences. And it just depends. It depends. Nothing is set in stone.
Right, right.
Would that be an AP schedule? Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
implement it during your reading.
Reading.
Okay.
And there are a lot of logistics that we have to take into consideration. A lot of our kids are being pulled out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always stress about that. I stress so much about, oh my God, these kids are being pulled out, blah, blah, blah. But you can't worry about that.
Right.
Just work with the kids you have there. Try to create the best schedule with your ESL teacher. You know, obviously during whole group and math, nobody's being pulled out unless you're tier 3.
Right.
All right? So then during small group and writing, they can be pulled out. And that's when you focus, whatever groups you have there, you focus, okay, this group needs this strategy. I'm going to pull them over to the carpet and we're going to work on this strategy with them. And we're going to talk about small group in a little bit. I'm going to do one more, and this is a higher level complex.
So Gracie, I just checked in with Elisa, and she is working on her character study with Gloria Dunn, and you're in her same book club. Tell me about what study you're doing in the book club. Okay, and why did you choose Winn-Dixie?
You're like 4th or 5th grade.
This is what you're Dixie, the first story.
So Grace, you chose Winn-Dixie Bob, you like him, he's part of, he's a critical character in the book, he kind of brings everybody together. What do you know about Kate DeCamillo and animals? Think about him, that's what I think about, because of Winn-Dixie. Yeah, the characters are animals, so it's kind of cool that you chose the animal to focus in on. But, so like I was telling Elisa, you're rereading this book for this, actually the 3rd time, because we read it out loud together too. So you're rereading this book for the 3rd time. Are you going to get any more information about Winn-Dixie, or is this an opportunity for you to really dig deeper in your mind? Probably to dig deeper in your mind. And how are you going to learn more about the character of Winn-Dixie? Because he doesn't talk, does he? So what's your strategy for trying to kind of figure out more about him and his importance in the book? Okay, tell me a little more. So say you're rereading and you come to this kind of aha moment about Winn-Dixie, like maybe not what he's thinking necessarily, but how his actions affect other people. Or maybe what he's thinking, you might do that too. How are you going to kind of keep track of that so that you can share out in book club? Because Winn-Dixie is going to affect all the other characters in book club. You're shaking this. Okay, and I showed Elisa this thing. And this would be a little different for you though. I showed Elisa to write kind of her aha moments. Well, that was a big deal. That kind of changed the way I think about things. What I'm going to encourage you to do though, Grace, is to not only write your aha moments, but write how, and I'm just going to write the question down here for you. How is Winn-Dixie affecting the other characters in this moment? Because there's going to be aha moments where whatever Winn-Dixie does kind of changes the other characters, their feelings, their actions, and then it has kind of like a column. It starts out little and then it gets bigger and bigger. Kind of a chain reaction or snowball effect. So let's write that chain, double chain.
he kind of has that effect on people, doesn't he? The chain reaction. So instead of just inference, we talked about how you're doing that already. Trying to find out your kind of aha chain reaction moments. We're going to take a okay, come on. Do you need some more sticky notes? Yeah.
This is a higher level, 4th, 5th grade. She was really probing her.
Yeah.
I love that conference. I actually do some with some of my higher level readers. I do these types of conferences where they're past already the fluency and accuracy, and they've got a lot of vocabulary, but they're working on comprehension. So I give them little mini projects. This is almost like the CLI Readers Workshop, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, the Readers Workshop, where it's working with your higher level kids. They're working in a book club or a lit circle or something. I know, I want to do more of that. And that's what your higher level kids could be doing while you're working with the kids that need the accuracy and the fluency and they need to get better readers, become better readers. So there's a lot of things that worked in there, a lot of things. So she chose the goal. Well, let's you guys tell me, what do you think worked in the video? What are some of the things that she did?
For me, she definitely hinted, and giving her that little bit of clue stimulated her thinking. And she reinforced how she's read this book and she's going to be able to share with her other classmates. So it's not something that she's keeping to herself. This is part of the classroom group activity.
And she's really analyzing whether she's going to get any use from that, reading that text again, or she should make a better decision and choose a different one.
Yeah.
That was good.
And she talked about Katie Camillo and animals and how it was very interesting that she chose an animal. So she's kind of like personalizing it for her, which I thought was really cool. And then she let the student decide the next goal, but she kind of helped her.
So giving her some questions. She starts reading so she can answer it and she can think more about it.
So she decided she's going to work on a comprehension skill with the student. She's ready for that, and it's a really good one. It's how characters affect the story and the other characters in the story.
I like that it's not at the table, somewhere else, very informal.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that
Very
because
conversational.
I don't like doing conferences. I do conferences at the table, but I prefer to do them on the rug. You can do them anywhere. Yeah, it's a little bit more informal and a little more personal.
One thing that I noticed about it is that she was also talking to her about another student in the class, and the strategies that she was using.
Yes.
And probably, I would imagine, it has to be a friend of hers, somebody that she identifies with, and that's one of those ways of providing, one of the ways of making sure that somebody can get something is showing them how somebody that they identify with is successful with their strategies. And that was something she was doing with her. She was providing that vicarious master experience.
Yeah, that was a good conference. I wouldn't change anything in the conference. Alright. Alright, so let's see what else we have. So let's talk about small group strategy lessons. Okay. There are different ways that you can do guided reading. Alright? Back in the day, there's so many different ways you can do guided reading. Back in the day, it was round robin reading. We don't do round robin reading anymore. That's when kids are there and then one reads, the other reads, the other reads, the other reads. We don't do that anymore. There are several ways you can do this. All the kids can have the same text. The very same text. It could be a journey's reader, and then you focus on a reading strategy. Okay? Now, it should not be the same strategy that you worked on in the whole group.
Because whole group, let's say you worked on story structure. In small group, with their level text, the goal should be to help them become better readers. So you're going to focus in on whatever their needs are, whatever the students' needs are. This group of kids need to work on finding context clues. All right? So that's what you're going to work on. So they all have the same book, the same reader. You front load the book and you set a purpose. Okay, vamos a leer este libro, el cuento de los tres osos. Okay, whatever. Quiero que pongan atención a los personajes. Hay mucho diálogo en este libro, así que pongan atención en quién está hablando, porque si no están poniendo atención, se van a equivocar, no van a entender el cuento. Y créanme, porque yo lo leí y me pasó lo mismo. Tuve que leerlo de nuevo para entenderlo. ¿Okay? Si tienen que volver a leerlo, háganlo. Okay, pero quiero que se enfoquen en esto. Cuando estén leyendo, traten de buscar palabras en la oración que te ayuden a entender una palabra difícil que no entiendes. All right? So, they start reading. All right? Here's one way you can do it. Frank, vente, siéntate aquí en mi asiento del lector. Quiero que me leas. Okay? Frank is excited. Come and sit next to me. He reads. And you know what? He's not working on context clues. He's still behind you. He's working on fluency, so I guess what? I can't work with context clues with him. So what I do is I focus on whatever he needs. Okay? They're still on the same book. And I'm trying to work on the same strategy.
Are you taking notes?
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. And then another way of doing it is they're on the rug, they're reading the same book. You front load it, you set a purpose, you tell them what the strategy they're focusing on. You go around and you sit next to that one. Okay? And you're jotting notes, you're scaffolding, you're showing them strategies, modeling. Finally, you get to try to get at least 1 or 2 or 3 students that are working on that goal of context clues. All right? And then you focus on that, you work on that with them. Then you share, you focus, you're like, Pedro, cuéntame, ¿cómo fue que tú entendiste esa palabra difícil que encontraste? He'll explain it to you, hopefully. He'll explain it to you and tell you what he did. All right? So, ¿entienden? Mis hijos, como ustedes vayan a leer, enfóquense en las palabras que usa el autor para ayudarte a entender otras palabras que son difíciles en la oración. Y enfóquense en eso y practiquen eso cuando estén leyendo independientemente. So that would be like a strategy lesson. Quick, easy. All right. Another one would be that they're working on different level books. They're working on different level books, but you work on the same strategy with them. Whether it's fluency, and they could be doing it in their own level book. They could be using different journeys, readers, or whatever books you have in your classroom. So let's look at some examples of small group strategy lessons.
Yeah, I like the different books.
Yeah, this is a small group where okay, so this is a small group where it's the same strategy with different books. And I think this is one of the sisters.
What two?
We're going to talk today about a strategy that a lot of people use, and it's one that we're looking at for you guys, and it's talking about fluency. So before we even go into the strategy, what is fluency? You know about fluency, right? Smooth, without any errors. Do you know anything else about fluency?
You know what, that is fluency. We're going to learn also a little bit more, and I'm going to show you. We're going to talk about fluency, but we're going to talk about this strategy in particular, which is punctuation, which, you know, there are periods and our commas and exclamation marks and quotations, and it's with phrasing and something called prosody. Phrasing is, you don't hear me talk like this and it's always at the same place. You hear me talk, and then I'll do some pausing, and then I'll talk a little more and I'll pause. And prosody is how our voices go up and down. So I want to show you what this is going to look like really quick. I brought this sentence, and it's going to exactly model for you fluency with punctuation and phrasing. So let's look at this one first. Can somebody read this really simple sentence? Ready, read this first. Okay, what's that mean? Look at that huge hot dog.
Read that.
What do you think it means? What do you think? So, one of these that we eat? Yes, what else, Mark? So exactly, Mariah. Look how we read this. Look at that huge hot dog. Now, I made this in a different color. Look at it this way. Look at that huge hot dog. So look at that huge hot dog. Munch, munch, munch. Look at that huge hot dog. Mariah, that would be a big dog that's really, really hot. When we talk about fluency, our punctuation and a lot of times our commas can really make a difference on whether or not we understand what it is. Because if I were talking about, let's say, pointing over there and saying, look at that huge hot dog, and you guys are thinking there's going to be seeing a dog that's painted because it's a big dog that's really hot, it's not going to make sense, is it? So fluency also talks a lot about commas and being aware of our punctuation, our commas, and our periods. So what I want to do is I want to show you also what this looks like in this book. I brought this book for you, and I want us to look at this one page really quickly together, and I'm going to have you try to practice this. So this is, it's called This is the Tree. And it says, this is the tree with a huge rounded belly, all mixed in shadows, in a sea of new grass. This is the tree that the tribespeople visit to cut bark, spilling insects on red beaten earth. Okay, wait a minute. That made not a lot of sense to me. Did you hear how I read the second verse? This is the tree with the huge rounded belly. There's a comma here. All lacy with shadows in a sea of grass. I think I did wrong here. I read it the same way. This is the tree that the tribespeople visit. There's no comma there though. But I read it like there was. So how would I read that differently then? Listen to how I read it, and then have one of you try to read it. This is the tree that the tribespeople visit to cut bark, spilling insects on red beaten earth. It's not making a lot of sense. Can somebody read it differently with, right, give it a try. What do you think? Okay, now that makes a little more sense. So the tribespeople visit this tree to cut bark, spilling the insects on the red beaten earth. Look at how different that was. The way I paused and the way she paused. It changed the whole meaning. Well, the first time I didn't really get it at all, but it made more sense when we read it the correct comma. So, what we really are going to spend some time working on this year, and it's really a goal, you guys, that you work on for the rest of your lives. It's this fluency, but it's really being aware of punctuation and how it changes where you pause and where your voice goes up and down. A lot of times when we're reading, if we don't get it right, you've got to do what we did, back up and read it again. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to have you practice with your books today And right now, I'm going to have you open up to where you're reading in your book, and I want you to read for about 15 seconds and see if naturally a place comes up that you can be aware of your punctuation, that it might change it. So read in your book for just about 15 seconds before we wrap up. So we would next time we would encourage towards it wouldn't make as much sense. Can you understand? Did you find a place that naturally came up? Not yet, and sometimes it doesn't. All right, did you? Okay, so can you read just a sentence or so from that, and let's see if it's making sense. Okay, did you know her prosody? On the third day, in the evening, were there commas in that section? So if you read it and pretend those commas aren't there. We have a tendency to lose our comprehension, to not understand as much. You also found one that she was reading, and it seems like right now, with kids as old as you, it's more about commas than it is about periods. When you were little, a lot of little kids forget the periods. For you guys, it's getting more like your commas. So here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you go back out to do reading. In your notebooks, I want you to have your page open so that if you come to a section that you notice a lot of commas and it's not making sense and you have to back up, I just want you to write down the page that happened so that when we meet back together, we can look through that and model for each other and kind of talk out loud about that fluency and how it makes a difference when we're reading. Okay? So we're really working on fluency and that punctuation, in particular those comments. Okay?
That's a strategy lesson. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
So what did she do?
She modeled.
She modeled. What else did she do? It was focused.
Yeah, it was.
It was really focused.
It's from the sentences pretty.
And they were all working on different books, probably different levels, but they could work on the same skill. And that works a lot better with the upper level kids who are at different levels, but they need to work on it. And prosody, which is entonación in Spanish, entonación, is very important. And paying attention. A lot of our little kids, like she said, they just forget there's periods, commas. They don't look at the punctuation, the exclamation points, and it makes a difference for them to understand what the author is trying to say and comprehension, basically. It makes a big difference. If you take away a comma, it could mean something completely different. So that's something I work on a lot with my kids, especially. They lose the meaning.
Absolutely.
They lose the meaning. I work on that with my lower level kids all the time.
I like that she gave them sort of a task to go
Yes.
back and read, find more examples, take notes.
And they have a reader's
They
notebook.
have their notebook.
Yeah, I have that. And my kids have a reader's notebook and a writer's notebook. So they always bring it with them when they come to conference. So sometimes I give them something to do where they have to write, or put sticky notes. And then she gave them a goal
Yes.
for the next time they were going to come back and read. So they know that when they come back, they're going to be opening up their reader's notebook and showing all those spots where they found, places where they could use, where they could read and have better prosody and use the punctuation.
I love that word.
So those are, I know, entonación en español. And she uses those words. That's the most important thing, that she's using all of those words and she's teaching them all of those those words that are high academic language that they're going to need
For the
when
rest of their lives.
for the rest of their lives and for the upper grades, you know? How are we on time? Oh my God, I'm so fast, it's not funny. Alright, so this is the last one we're going to talk about. Whole group instruction. Whole group instruction is very focused. Again, it's very correlated with senderos. So basically, you're doing it already. It's just a matter of pointing to the CAFÉ board, writing the strategy, and putting it up there when you're done. All right. So let's just look at the 6 steps that CAFÉ gives us for whole class instruction. Identify what is to be taught and share the secret to success. Teach a strategy. Model, reinforce, explain. Student practice with partners. It can be turn and talk. Select a student to write and illustrate the CAFÉ menu strategy card the first time it's taught. This is something I haven't been doing, but I want to do it this year. I have all of the strategies pre-typed up, real pretty, you know, real nice and neat, but really, the kids should help you write it.
It reinforces.
Because it gives them ownership of it, it's personal for them, they're writing it, they're putting it up, it means more to them. As opposed to me pulling out something I typed up and laminated.
Right. I have them, and you know what I do though? I keep it next to them, and I say, you can write it exactly what you see here.
Yeah.
Just copy it and reinforce it. Don't think of it.
So
How do you
let's
spell
watch the
that?
whole group. Check for understanding. This is the very first strategy you're going to teach them. The beginning of speech. Verificar que estoy entendiendo. Chequear que estoy entendiendo lo que estoy leyendo. And the 2 key things that you tell the kids, para verificar que estás entendiendo, tú vas a parar de leer y pensar. El quién. ¿Quiénes son los personajes? ¿Y qué están haciendo? ¿Qué está pasando? If they can answer those questions, they're understanding. So let's watch us whole group in action.
Checking for understanding. Checking for understanding, that's one of those comprehension strategies that we've been working on. And when I check for understanding, I'm going to check 2 really important things. I'm going to check who is in the story and the what. What happened? Okay? Let's find out. Let's find out why her face is red. I want my dinner!
I love her screens.
Say, please, said the queen. I want my dinner, please. I'm going to check for understanding right in that spot. Who is in the story? That's true. What happened? She screamed that she wanted her dinner. She did not use those manners, and the queen told her mom. Let's try another one. I want my patty! Say please, said the general. I want my patty, please! Lovely. Who was in the story? The princess again. And the general. When in the story, this part. That's the who and the what. She needed her body right this moment, didn't she? That was the what. And she had to say please, didn't she? May I please? That would be a nice way to say it too. Let's
Okay. That was good.
Yeah.
She did good. She modeled a lot. What else did she do that was good?
She stopped at every page to make sure that
Yes.
there was the who and the what.
She showed them that they should
answered.
stop.
Yes.
Like every page, think about the who and the what.
She kept repeating the keywords
She kept repeating the key words, the who and the what,
and also check for understanding.
and
Yes.
check for understanding. Anything you would have done differently?
Said
Yes.
her- Yeah.
Yes. She didn't give them a chance to try it. I would have stopped. I would have read the next 2 pages, or I would have said, okay, now I'm going to read. Yo voy a leer las próximas 2 páginas. Quiero que ustedes piensen en verificar por entendimiento, piensen en el personaje y qué está haciendo. Vamos a leer.
She didn't give
So I
them
would
that
read the
wait
next 2
time.
pages, stop. Ok, hablen con sus compañeros ahora. Da la vuelta y habla con tu compañero. And then I would give them a chance to answer.
We call
But-
that wait time.
Wait time. So that's a whole group lesson. Now, notice that this is not a comprehension like a senderos. All right? So this you would probably do, after you've done, let's say you did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, main idea, detail, whatever that. Take a day or 2 to put in one of these strategies, or to reinforce it, or do it during small group if you have to. But we're always dealing with time constraints. We're always dealing with that. All right, let's see what else we have. Basically, we're going to wrap it up. So let's just go over the benefits of CAFÉ in the Bilingual classroom. It helps you keep track of each child's strengths and goals so you can maximize the time you spend with them. It presents strategies so that the student can access them when needed and practice them until they are proficient. They can use these same strategies when they read English or any other language. These are transferable strategies. They can use it in any language they're learning. And you're meeting each child's needs with tailored instruction. All right? Questions, comments? Concerns? So this is what your board is going to look like. So notice that she had them write the strategies. See how cute it looks in their handwriting? And then up here, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to have this part, I'm going to have it down here. My English is short, so,
Yeah.
so they can better reach you. So you're going to have all the strategies, you're going to have the goals up here, the strategies, and then this part will be down here or up here, that's going to be their names with the indication of what goal they're working on. All right? Any questions, comments?
Excellent. And those strategies prepared beforehand, are they copying it, or are we doing mini lessons to each strategy? And eventually they'll be all up there.
Eventually, they'll be all up there. But when even the book says it, for emerging readers, for lectores emergentes, you might not get to all of them. And if you notice with the emerging one, there's a focus on fluency and accuracy. If you notice, there's a lot more here and an expand vocabulary than in here and here. Because remember, these two come before this.
Right.
If they can't read fluently or accurately, they're not going to get the comprehension.
Exactly. And
Alright.
the thing is that the book gives you like a step-by-step.
Right. The CD in the book has a lot of all the lessons mapped out for you with example language you can use. Obviously it's in English, but it's just a matter of just transferring the skills. That's it. So I have a couple things for you guys.
Okay.
To get you started. Now, I have different kinds, so you guys don't have to fight for these. We have a little like bubble. That's a soccer ball. That's what? Basketball. Another cloud, basketball, soccer, hearts, and stars. Whatever you want. Sagittarius stars. Yes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you have that. You have the book.
I'm ready. Can we think? Chantel?
Chantel, pick
Listen,
one.
I'm asking.
You have another one if you want. No, you have one.
Our kids love posters too.
Well, but they're not like the same ones, so.
I
Right.
know.
I'm
Yes,
going
go
to,
ahead.
what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I'm gonna take this.
I'll share.
Well,
Thank
you guys, thank you so much for coming, for being a part of this with me. I hope I get the green.
Oh, we just did two?
And I'm happy to, my doors are always open if you have any questions about
Scheduling
anything.
is where I get all.
If you have any questions about anything,
Let me ask
please.
this, would you be interested, if this is something you're interested in, you know, maybe work out dates and logistics and everything, maybe doing a couple of after-school sessions, you know, maybe like 3 of them in sequence.
Yes.
You know,
I would love that.
That way they can get all their cafe questions answered and it's kind of
Excellent.
like an additional support throughout the year.
Yes, I'm game for that. And I was gonna mention that maybe we should have some sort of, and you emailed us, and that was great.
Have a cafe club.
We should have more opportunities to do this as a bilingual group.
Yeah.
We need to find the time to do this.
Yeah, I think what would be nice is if we had something, you know, I had put that one out, but those are sort of 2-hour one-shots to kind of get people, you know, get people involved and used to kind of sharing with each other. But I think for something like this, I'd love to see a campaign. And so, you know, what's coming to mind for me right now is some sort of, we could even call it cafe clubs.
Yeah, we can do that.
That would be maybe once or twice a month from 4 to 6, and Joel might be the one to start that out.
Yes.
Get everybody comfortable with it. But then, you know, you might later on decide, you know, let me take the next 2-hour session and say, this is how we do it in first grade, this is what it looks like in second, this is what it looks like in fourth. And, you know, really kind of share with each other, and also that way you can kind of bring your, you know, bring your questions, bring your concerns and things like that. We are kind of in an interesting place right now with not having a language arts supervisor, and I don't know how long that situation will
I
last.
just found that out. I didn't even know.
And you know, I mean, as much as I support things, I'm not the expert. I have to defer to Joel, for example, with that because, you know, I'm second language acquisition, but cafe is really at this point his baby. So.